Right, good morning, welcome back. Now you've seen the avatar, you know what this video is about. It's very straightforward. We're going to match the upgrade to the front suspension we did in the last video with something meaningful for the rear. You can't do anything to the shocks that are on the back end. In fact, you can't do anything to any rear shocks really, except change them for better ones. So let's do that today and show you what we've got in store. Okay, Fox Performance Series Black. Now these are made by Fox Racing, our undeniable world quality suspension company, but they're approved by the factory. If you check them out here, they're a factory accessory. Now, whether the factory had a long drawn out development process with Fox to make these especially, or whether they just chose them from the Fox range and put their badge on them, I don't know. No idea, and I don't think any of us would know. But the fact is, if they put their badge on them, well, they're going to be good. They're going to be up to factory standard. We all know if you've had a Bonneville series bike for any length of time that the durability is legendary. You can ride them in any weathers, wash them off, and they're fine. The engine coatings, the powder coating on the frame, they just last forever. Really good quality, well-built motorcycles. And any accessory that they put their badge on that is intended for those bikes has to be the same quality, because they've got to warranty it. Because if you buy your new bike and you select a pair of these from the accessory catalogue and they bolt them on day one, they've got to stand up to the same 2-year warranty as the bike. So they're going to be good. Now, everything's already been said about these, so I'm going to leave it there. They're very easy to fit, very straightforward. It's 4 bolts, but there's a few do's and don'ts, so we'll cover that. Let's get them fitted. Right, if you're going to jack your bike up to take the suspension off, it has to be quite precise, the amount you jack it up by. It mustn't be too much that it lifts the wheel up, because it will still be under load, but it must be enough to unload the weight on the suspension. So it's quite precise. That means that the main stand is no good, because it lifts the wheel right up, but a paddock stand is no good either, because that keeps it under load. So you've got to get a little jack under the bike somewhere and lift it up. Now if you've got one of these or anything like it, you might have a scissor jack in the boot of your car. And it's quite simple. Have the bike on the side stand, and just put the jack under this right hand frame rail. Put a little cloth there just to protect it, and then just twist it or jack it up to the point where it jacks over onto the side stand very slightly. It only needs to be about an inch, just enough to take the weight off the shocks. But make sure you've got someone standing on the left hand side of the bike so it doesn't topple over. Right, just a safety thing here I want to say, and that's to clean out your threads. This is very important. I see a lot of people not doing it. It's very, very critical to make sure that these bolts are torqued up to the correct value and that they don't move. They are suspension bolts after all. So when you take the factory ones out, they've got all this blue crusty residue on. That's the factory thread lock, and that's dead. It won't ever work again. It's meaningless. It must be cleaned off. If you're going to use the bolts again, then clean them off completely before you put them back in with more thread lock. In this case, you get new bolts with thread lock on them, so you use them. Use the old washers, but these new bolts, you put them in, they've got all the thread lock they need. You just put them in dry and that does the locking. But the residue in those holes that's left over, that crustiness, that horrible blue powder in there, that must be cleaned out with a thread tap. Because if it's left behind, then when you screw your new bolt in, that crusty powder starts to build up around the thread, cause a resistance, and that could mean that your torque wrench clicks early. So the bolt actually isn't done up as tight as it should be, and obviously that is a critical issue. So make sure you always clean out your old threads before you put your new bolts in. But you knew that. because I know you're going to ask. Standard shock. 4 pounds, 4 ounces. Ready for this? 4 pounds, 10 ounces. 6 ounces heavier, so totally 12 ounces added to weight of the bike. 3/4 of a pound. I can live with that. Incidentally, when you fit these, they are handed or sided as well. They're not universal. They have, as you can see, on the inside and outside of the shock mounts themselves, they're different. You've got a rubber bushing in there and a steel top hat bush that sits inside it. So it's the flat side of the bushing, the shiny silver side goes in towards the frame, and on the outside you see the rubber bushing there, and the factory washer goes over that to cover it up. So they're definitely left and right, not universal. A lot of the time, we do things up too tight because we're worried they'll come undone. And the more critical they are, the more likely that is. The setting on this is only 28 Newton meters. It isn't much. And when you've got your big long torque wrench, it clicks really easy and you kind of think, oh, is that enough? Is that going to come undone? Just do a bit more. And that's when we break things. And that's when vibration shears the bolt off or you strip the thread and it all gets ugly. 28 Newton meters is correct. Have faith in it. They don't say that for no reason. And if you're worried it's going to come undone, rather than over tightening it just to be sure, put some marker paint on it or a bit of a Sharpie marker at 12 o'clock. And if it's ever moved, well then you'll see that, won't you? And you can deal with it. Easy, eh? Right, okay, now you've fitted your suspension, all done, you're happy with your torque settings and you're ready to drop it off the jack. Just quickly on the adjustments that are available to you with these shocks. I think everybody else who's done videos on this has covered it, but I'll cover it as quickly as I can. The damping, first of all, is this little wheel here. It's compression damping only. You don't get rebound damping. It's not an option on these, only compression damping. And it's a little wheel here at the top, little finger wheel. And we come in and wind it all the way up to its tightest, clockwise. Screw it all the way in, and each time you turn it, you'll feel a click, 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 click as it goes around. Wind it all the way in to its tightest. There's 30 clicks from one end to the other, and that's all the way in. The factory then suggests 10 clicks out for stiff riding. So just turn it out 1 click, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on to 10. That's stiff, firm, sporty riding, they suggest. 18, click a few more, and that takes you to normal riding, everyday riding. And keep going to 23, and that's comfort riding, nice and soft. But that's up to you because the comfort is subjective. That's what you want. That's just base settings, suggested settings for your damping. Personally, set it on 18, ride it up the road, and once you're comfortable and you think, I'll give it a try, click it up a couple. If you think, well, that's a bit stiff, I preferred it as it was, click it back down. It's your personal taste, and you're only going to fine tune that from riding and trying and testing and changing it. The other thing is preload. You get preload on the standard shocks, and it's on the usual C-spanner idea with the stepped collar, but this is not. It's much simpler, much easier. I'll show you how to adjust it. Preload is the traditional collar in the normal way, but this is a split collar with a pinch bolt. So wind it all off so it's completely unpinched, and then you can turn it to put preload on by hand. Just put your fist around it, grab the shock, spring, and the collar with your finger, and just turn it. You don't need a C-spanner, not necessary. Do it by hand. Now there's one turn. Now, the book, the factory instructions suggest that when it comes to you in the box, when these come out of the box, they are set there on 0. They call that 0, no preload. And they suggest for the 3 settings to match your damping, for comfort riding, leave it unwound, 0. For normal day-to-day riding, leave it unwound, 0. And for sporty riding, you guessed it, 0. It's basically suggesting this spring is a progressive spring, leave it alone and enjoy it. If you're solo riding, don't touch it, it's fine. But again, it's subjective. It's how you want it. If you want to put one turn on that and you find it, then you do that. It's absolutely fine. It does suggest, however, for pillion riding, if you're carrying luggage and a camel on the back and whatever, you need to put up to 7 turns into that. But really, again, there's no way you're going to know that that's correct until you ride it and find out for yourself. It's subjective, as I said. So that's it. Once you've done it, get your Allen key, do up your pinch bolt so it doesn't move all of its own accord, and you set your suspension. And if you need to reset it, it's very easy. You can practically do it on the fly. Right, okay, now that's all the hard work done. We're saving the best till last here. We've shed 2 stone in weight, we've tweaked the suspension and added a few fun farkles as well. But now it's time for a test ride. But before we do that, I'm going to make the last video the simplest upgrade yet. I'm going to fit a fuel booster plug. Very simple little thing. It literally plugs in seconds. It smooths out the pull away and it wakes up the acceleration. It's a massive improvement for not a great deal of money, but I'll cover it all in the next video. This little thing takes literally 2 minutes to fit, but I'm not going to do it today because I want to fit it at the beginning of the next video and take the bike out for a good long test ride and bed everything in and check everything out. And I think I'll take you with me for the ride. We'll take the cameras, we'll do some fun corners. You can hear this cool exhaust, what it actually sounds like outdoors, and I'll see whether it actually handles any better. So I'll see you next time.